Let's take another look at a particular aspect in algebra that some people are having trouble with. This is the negative numbers in algebra. I'm going to use examples from FOIL and changing the subject, as well as obviously negative numbers. So it might be a good idea to have a look at those videos, as I'm not going to go through the processes in depth. We'll just be focusing on the negative numbers and how to deal with them. Here then we've got a nice equation, 6x plus 2, y plus 5 and minus 4x. Now the trouble with this is a lot of people look at the equation seeing it as 6x, 2, y, 5 and 4x with operators between them. But the way you need to look at it is the operator and the number or term should come together. So for instance, by here, and excuse the symbol going wrong, but the minus 4x, instead of seeing it as taking away 4x, think of it as a minus 4x, negative 4x when working with it. So we've got plus 2, plus 5 and negative 4x. Of course, this leads to the question of, well, what's the symbol in front of these two? Because they're positive numbers and terms, there'll be a plus sign in front of them. It's just it's invisible and we don't write that down if it's at the start of the equation. So consider the equation when we're manipulating it as a plus 6x, a plus 2, plus y, plus 5 and minus 4. It's different when we're multiplying and dividing, but when we're adding and subtracting something on, so merge the number and the operator together. Let's take this for equation, for example, and we want to make the x's the subject of the equation. And we know that we have to move the number to the other side of the equation because we've got the term with x's over here. So we're going to move the 2. Now, if you'd have considered it as 2, you might not know what to do with the 2. But because we can see it's plus 2, the plus becomes a minus, and so the minus gets put on the end of the other side of the equation. Similarly, we want to move the negative 4x to this side of the equation. So some people make the mistake of thinking of it as 4x, and then when they move it, they put down plus 4x or minus 4x. Whereas if you think of it as negative 4x, you know that the sign changes. So when we move it to the other side, it becomes plus 4x. And if you notice here as well, some people make the mistake of just moving the 4 and you'd be left with minus 2 plus 2. So that changes the equation completely. Simplifying down then, we'll get 10x on the left side and y plus 3 on the right side. And that's as far as I'm going to go, although we could divide both sides by 10 to make x the subject. Here's another little example, and I want to make the number the subject. I want to see the value of the 1 in terms of x and y. So to do that, I'm going to have to move the y across to this side. Now, because if there was just the y, if I hadn't shown the invisible plus, then I might not know what symbol it becomes. With practice, you'll begin to recognize that it's a plus sign. But in this case, by writing down the positive, we know that when we move it over to the other side, it becomes a negative. And I end up with 6x minus y equals minus 1. Notice how when I've got my finished answer, I take the invisible plus off at the start. So there's my what 1 is, or minus 1 is worth in terms of 6x minus y. Let's have a look at another example. Minus 6x minus 2y equals minus 5. I'm making x the subject, so I'm moving the minus 2y over to the other side. And the minus turns into a positive, so we've got minus 6x is equal to minus 5 plus 2y. Now, to get rid of the 6x, I didn't do this before, but now I'm going to put x as a subject on its own. And to do that, because we've got minus 6 times x, we're going to move the minus 6 underneath. So everything on this side has to be divided by minus 6. leaving us with x. Remember, in a few videos ago we looked at how we divide something by a number. Everything in the equation that's separated by a plus or minus is divided that. So we're going to have x equal to minus 5 over minus 6 plus 2y over minus 6. Now, normally in algebra we'd leave it at this simplified version up by here, but I want to show you this in order to note how the symbols change. Because we're dividing minus 5 by minus 6, a minus by a minus, go back to working with negative and positive numbers and you know that a minus divided by a minus is a positive. Similarly, because by here we're dividing plus 2 by minus 6, 2 divided by positive divided by minus will give us a minus. So we actually end up with 5/6, not minus 5/6, because it's a minus divided by a minus, and plus minus 2 over 6. And we know that when a plus and a minus are next to each other, they become a negative because they're separate signs. So there we are. We've got 5 minus 2y over 6. We've changed the signs. Another way to look at it is the signs on the top were minus 5 and plus 2y. We just changed those symbols around to a plus 5 and a minus 2y in order to make the bottom positive or the different sign. Let's have a look at FOIL then, because FOIL is going to involve a lot of work with negative and positive symbols. We're splitting up into its parts. Notice how I'm working with the signs as well, not just the numbers. So I don't consider this a 2, I consider it a plus 2. And I don't put this as think of this as a 4, I consider it as a minus 4. We've got to multiply the firsts first. So because we're considering the symbol as well, it's going to be minus 6x times minus 5x. And a minus times a minus will give us a positive 30x squared. Then we're going to do the outside, so it's going to be minus 6x times minus 4. That's the importance. People, when they consider this as just a 4, not as a minus 4, they think of it as take away 4. They don't put a 4 down here, they put minus 4 down here, they put a 4. But if you consider the sign and the number together, it's minus 6x times minus 4, giving us 24x. And notice now how I put a little positive sign in front for the time being. It'll be useful later on. Next, we've got the inside, so it's going to be plus 2 times minus 5x, giving us minus 10x. Let me put that on. And then the last, again, this is the reason why we think of the signs together, because we're going to have a 2 times a minus 4, not a 2 times 4, giving us minus 8. And we'll put that on the end. Remember, now we can simplify this down and gather the like terms, because we've got 24x and minus 10x. And because we put that sign in, we're thinking of it as a positive 24x. And 24 minus 10 is 14. And usually with quadratic equations like this, we want that the equation is equal to 0. So I'm going to move the minus 5 to this side. Remember, like we just said, the negatives become the positive when we move them to the opposite side. And again, I can simplify down because we've got two numbers here, two coefficients. So minus 8 plus 5 is minus 3. So that shows us how we work with negative and positive symbols in algebra. Don't consider the numbers or terms or variables without making the symbol in front of them part of that term or number.